Don't let its small size fool you. The MC-101 can sound massive. What's up and welcome back to Gabe Miller Music. Today I want to show you my process for getting the absolute most out of the tiny beast that is the Roland MC-101. This is going to be a hybrid workflow, so part of this video will be on the MC-101 itself and part of it will be in the DAW. Be sure to watch to the end because it all goes together. All that being said, let's jump into it. This is what it sounds like with just its primary 4 tracks. And I'll go through those one by one, starting off with the drums. So I've got some custom samples that I'm using. A combination of samples I got off Splice and stuff from my $5 sample pack. Link in the description. It helps support the channel. Keep it going. So just a fairly simple little drum clip. And I also have gone into the multi-effects. And I have the enhancer on, so let me turn that off. Just hyping the drums up a little bit. And in post, I'm going to process this kind of drum bus even further. I also have an alternate version, which will go with an alternate bass line that I'll show you in a second. This is the preset Freeze synth, and it's got an interesting kind of harmonic thing built into the patch itself, but I'm also using the chord mode, which you get to by pressing the note button twice, and it turns these pads this kind of lime, green, yellow thing. So we've got all these lovely little harmonic bits. And that's what that sounds like. So that was the thing that really got the track going. This is the preset Follow Me. You can hear the glide kicking in nicely. There's that lovely kind of phasing. It's very much meant to float over the top of that chord progression, and it's fairly simple. Up next, the bass. This is MG deep bass, and I have modified this a bit. And I have all those little octave jumps with, once again, the glide kicking in quite a bit. And that kind of works with the pattern that the kick's doing as well. Everything's just in the pocket. So those are our main elements, but I've done a whole lot more building on this third track. I've set this track to have its sound source be on a clip-by-clip basis rather than a track-by-track basis. So each of these clips have a different sound loaded in. And so I just started stacking literally anything and everything I could possibly think of, knowing that I would record all of those tracks, bring them into my DAW, and then layer them on top of each other and have stuff to work with arranging later. Often I'll want to do live jams on the MC-101. This is not that. This is very deliberately using this as a production tool to just start stacking stuff so I can have stuff to work with in post. It's very much a deliberately 2-part process. So I have this little bell. I have this Step Slicer 6 patch, which is fun, adds a bit of texture. I should also show you this bell is SLD51. Moving on. New Epic Pad. And this is using the chords from that track 2. And I've literally copied that clip into here and then changed out the patch. And that gives us this. Up next, just a simple piano. Grand XV. I'm going to subtly layer that one in, I think, especially in intros. Trance synth, and I've modified the decay a bit. Not sure if I'm going to use this one yet. We'll find out. Analog poly delay is the patch. This is going to be foundational, especially for the intro portions. We're going to use this ARP a lot. And also to do that, you both activate the chord, and then you can go to Shift and Note, and you can control your various parameters. So I've chosen my motif to be note order, and I've chosen my octave range to be 2. I've turned hold off, and then you just hold down note, and you get your ARP. Which is lovely, and then hold it down again to turn it off. And now it's just a normal pluck, because chord mode's also off. So that's how we get our ARP. And then I've duplicated that clip and swapped out the patch on this clip. This is an octave down. So that's fun. Octave up lead. Duplicated from the lead track, and then if I go in here, you can see transpose is up 12 semitones, aka an octave. And this is the patch, X saw lead 2. And finally, I don't know if I'm going to use this yet, but I was kind of debating whether or not to use this patch or the patch I ended up going with. I think the patch I ended up going with fits the track a lot better and fits the vibe a lot better, but I do like this kind of cheesy trumpet sound. This is Porta saw lead. It's very 80s. So we'll see if I use this as a layer or maybe swap between it and the other one, but because I can, I've given myself those options. So that's the MC-101 side of the process. Now let's get into the DAW. So earlier today, I plugged my MC-101 into my computer via USB, ran the ASIO MC-101 drivers to record the individual tracks. And in addition to the default 4 tracks, I triggered all those other clips that I showed you, leaving the drums running. That way I could snap to the initial transient of the first kick and just snap everything to the grid, chopped out all the pieces that I wanted, and layered them all together. And that sounds like a mess. So we're going to clean that up, and we're going to do it on the fly. I don't know exactly how this is going to turn out, but I'm going to do my best to make it sound good. First up, I'm going to preemptively put a light amount of OTT on my master. I know it creates phase issues, Fox Stevenson, but I'm going to do it anyway. And then a limiter to catch some peaks. We'll dial that in later. And now let's solo the drums. Like I showed you earlier, I do have a bit of processing on this drum bus, but I'm going to add a bit more. I'm going to add Decap's knock plugin and see if we can get some results out of that. I want to keep this fairly clean. Before. I think that's a net improvement. We'll play around with it a bit more as we go. So one of the beauties of not working DAWless is that you can clean up your headroom. So I'm just going to high pass like a ton of my elements. So look at all that bass that we don't need. And then let's give this some space because right now it is dry AF. Crystalline I've been vibing on lately by Baby Audio. They did send it over, but not a sponsor. I'm going to keep that subtle for now. See that giant low end peak? Once again, we just don't need that. It's not helping the sound, especially not in the context of the mix. And I think this could benefit from some big ol' reverb and delay to have it not be so harsh. In fact, so I went in and tried to find its more or less harshest frequency and just tame it, because Lord knows it needed it. And I'm going to leave it at that for this one. So let's clean that up a bit as well. Upper mids are where the warmth normally lives, but also it's where the mud lives. So there's a balance to be had there. So that makes it more present. So here's pre-processing, and then here's width. We've both tamed it and made it more aggressive, which is fun. So at this stage, I'm going to go ahead and do the boring but vital act of sidechaining everything. And I put that in finger quotes because I'm not going to use a sidechained compressor, but I'm going to use volume automation. So I've created this blank track here. I'm going to put all this stuff, all of it, into a track folder, and then I'm going to apply a volume adjustment plugin. And you'll notice I moved that parameter so I can select it. And now let's set our grid to 16th notes. I'm going to pay attention to how long my kick and snare are, but I'm just going to kind of like whatever the ear equivalent of eyeballing this is. I know some people don't like how hard I go on sidechain. That's fine. I really like aggressive sidechaining. Let's hear how that sounds. It's adequate. I thought that would sound a little bit better than it does, but we'll work with it. Now, stuff like that lead, I'm probably actually going to remove from this folder so it floats over the top all nicely. What I do really want to hear is that octave up saw. Having two octaves of chords is like a big deal for this kind of melodic dubstep stuff. It brings it to life. So let me think about what I want here. Probably more reverb and more stereo width. We can let this have some phase issues. That restrained, and we're sidechaining the reverb as well, so together. Getting there. I need to be really careful with this bass or else it'll just overpower everything else it touches. So this might be kind of fun to layer in. I'm going to keep the processing very minimal on this. Just cut the mud, turn it down. Let's provide like a little bit of movement and texture. So we gotta be careful with this one as well. That's kind of nice. And then let's try to get this ARP in here, shall we? Okay, so no ARP in the drop. We're gonna do ARP in the like intro portion and in the build-up, I think. We're getting somewhere. That definitely sounds a lot bigger than it did when everything was super closed in. It didn't have any processing and was all stepping on each other's headroom and transients and all that fun stuff. So now, let's arrange this. And this is where I kick myself a little bit because if like I pick this up and move it, it doesn't affect this automation. So I'll just have to like copy and paste it around rather strategically and carefully. So the first thing I want is to get this ARP out of that sidechain folder. I'm going to bring it over here-ish. And I'm probably not going to do a full arrangement, but just a partial one to show you how I'm going to build this up to the eventual drop. So I've gone in and like slowly raised the cutoff of this ARP. So it gets more and more hype. I'm very much channeling the spirit of AU5 here, if you couldn't tell. One of my all-time favorite producers. I don't love how these two mesh together, aka the way they don't mesh together. That's a little better. So we're going to start with just the art by itself. Or potentially the dull ARP layered with it. Oh, that sounds great! I mess with that heavily. And this doesn't have any like automation in it, it's just kind of doing its own thing, but I will cut some of that low end. Like the low end's nice, it's really bringing it to life, but I don't want it to be too intense. Like there's all that mud in there that we don't want. And I think you need some delay. I think that'll go a long way. Bars. Ping pong. And then subtle. Ish. Just a little bit. See, that's nice. So I'm just going to duplicate this whole track and get it out of this stack. So maybe we turn this into a high cut filter. And we automate that over time. So we just have that lift. And then we have that. Get a fast end so it ramps up exponentially. That's nice. And so I want to let that loop twice, I think. We're going to let this take its time. Oh, but this is also ramping up, so I want to be careful to not have it get too hyper too early. So maybe we split this, we copy this. So now that this synth right here, our main chord synth, is fully kicked in, what I want to do is slowly introduce our higher pad as well. And I'm probably going to push it way into the background and let it be some just nice big ol' ambience. And then here's where we need to have everything break down so we can introduce the main melody. Maybe we add another EQ on the top of all of this. Actually, let's do it before the spaced out. Change that to a low pass. Yoink it downwards and introduce the main melody. What if we also duplicate the main melody, put a high cut on that? Let me just add a separate EQ for that. But I'll put it before the reverb. I've had better results with doing that. I keep hitting the wrong thing. So right there's where we're going to bring it in. And we're going to have that come in over the course of this section. And then I still need to automate this guy as well. Low pass. So I want this to be fully kicked in for the most part. And then we're going to have a nice, obvious filter sweep downwards to go. That's nice. And then what I do want to do is have this come in for realsies. Okay, so now we're starting to get hype. So let's also have this guy filter out. We're really just doing all the things in case you couldn't tell. A lot of filter movement is the absolute frickin' key. We're getting there. So we're starting to build. Let's bring in the bass. Put it in the wrong spot. What an absolute shockster, dude. And turn it down a bit. I want it to be louder in the drop than it is in the breakdown. So now, let's start to bring back that main saw. And now we're finally going to let the ARP have its little build. I think that's the way forward. And so then we have one more bar of building, go into a build-up, and go into the drop. But at this point, I think you've got the idea, so I'm not going to belabor it too much more. I spent a bit more time off camera refining stuff, retooling the arrangement, and polishing the mix. Here is the final full song. And I also was able to get that second drop in there. If you're a newcomer to the MC-101 and would like to learn more about it, you can click or tap up over here. And if you'd like to see some more general MC-101 music production, you can click or tap up over here. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll be back with a new video in a little bit.